So first things first, I'm just gonna go ahead and plug a cable into it and see if it makes any noise right now. So it's plugged in. Before we open it up, I just kind of want to see if it's making any noise. So let's go ahead and turn it on. Light comes on. Both knobs are at noon. See if we can hear any noise. Let's turn the volume all the way up. So there's definitely getting sound I can hear. I don't know if you'll be able to hear the hiss or not, but okay, so I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. So that works. Let's turn it up a little bit. Let's see if tone works. Okay, so the tone definitely works. Volume works. Let's try the other input. Much quieter. That works. So it says instruments on it. That's a lot quieter than that one. That one has no markings on it. Also quieter. Okay, so the amp is working. This input is much, much hotter. Again, I don't know anything about the amp, so I don't know why that is, but now I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off. Cable away. And now it's time for the fun part. So we are gonna go ahead and open the amp up and look at the internals, but we're gonna do it safely. Again, I gotta stress this, I am not an expert. I am not an authority on any of this stuff. I'm learning very much as I go. But I did do some due diligence to try and make sure I can do this safely, and I will show you guys what I have learned. And yeah, we'll just, you're along for the ride with me. So I'm first going to go ahead and unplug the amp from the wall. Next step, I'm going to go ahead and remove these screws. Okay, so now I'm going to carefully slide the chassis back a little bit, so you can just kind of see what we're looking at here. Careful not to touch anything on the inside. Just want to kind of let it hang there. So I'm going to rotate it so you guys can see a little bit better. Okay, so now, number one thing, you don't just stick your hands inside of an amp, especially one that was just on, but in general, never do that. So what I've learned is that these things right here, let me find my, it's just a little plastic prodding tool, not conductive. So what I've learned is that these capacitors here and here, let me see if I can get them to focus. So this big thing here, this guy right here, those are called capacitors, and they hold high voltage even when the amp is off. And so those, they store it, and so that's what can cause you issues. So you definitely want to make sure that there's no voltage in those before you stick your hand or work on the amp at all. So I'm going to show you guys how I've learned to do that from watching YouTube and watching and reading some stuff online. The other thing that I've learned too is that you're always supposed to have one hand in your pocket while you're kind of doing anything in an amp. So I think it has something to do with making sure that the electricity doesn't go all the way through your body, kind of grounding in you. I don't really know how it works, to be honest. It's just something I saw, so I'm going to be doing that going forward. So let's go ahead and get out a couple tools that we'll need to kind of do this next step. So first and most important would be the multimeter. This just kind of enables me to know what's happening. So I've got one here. It's nothing, crazy or super fancy, but it will do the job here. And so I want to set it to volts DC I have it set to 500. Sorry, I don't know if you guys will be able to see this or not. I focus it a little closer. So that's where I've got it set. And that'll be able to tell me the high voltage going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up, hopefully in a way that the camera can see it. Okay, that might just have to work here. Okay, and then because of that one hand in the pocket rule that I mentioned before, what I'm going to do is attach the ground one here to a little alligator clip thing I made. See that? So just a wire with 2 alligator clips. I'm soldered onto it with some insulation. So I'm going to connect one to the ground, which in this case will just be the chassis. So I'm just going to connect that here, and then I'm going to connect the other end to this, just like that. I don't know how well to be able to see it, but again, not an expert. This is not a how-to, but just kind of walking you guys through what I've learned and as I do things. So I'm just going to get that out of the way here. Okay, so now we've got ground, and then I can kind of poke and prod with this end, and we'll see what shows up here. I don't really know, to be honest, where I should be doing it, but I'm just going to go where these filter caps are plugged into to see if that, not plugged, but soldered into, to see if that kind of gives me what I'm looking for. So we'll go to this one right here, which has this big black cap. Okay, so it says 7. So it's only 7 volts. I'll go to the one that's attached to that here. Also 7. Go to the other ones here. 7. 7. 7. This red wire right here is connected. That's all connected, so it'll be 7 here as well. Okay, so it looks like it only has 7 volts, even though it's just on, so the amp, I guess, did not retain the voltage. I don't know what that means, but if I were to plug it in, turn it on, and do the same thing, I should be seeing like hundreds of volts here, not 7 or 8. So anyways, no matter. So right now, 7 volts is nothing. That's, you know, a 9-volt battery won't harm you. So 7 volts is nothing. I could easily stick my hand in here and not worry about getting shocked or anything. Again, the amp is unplugged, but I'm going to show you the other little tool I got. And this is really important for when the amp doesn't just kind of diminish the voltage on its own like it seems to have done here. This is called a snuffer stick or something like that. I picked this up. You can make something like this on your own at home, but I figured I'd just buy what somebody's already marketed and designed specifically for this. From what I understand, it's basically like this kind of wood rod with some resistors inside of it, and then this goes to ground, and it just kind of slowly discharges the caps. So we're gonna go and try that. So I'm gonna first connect this red one, connect the alligator clips to it like I did before, so we can see on the multimeter it having an effect. So I'm going to connect this to where it said 7. Okay, now it says 8. So hopefully you guys can see that. So now I'm going to take my little snuffer stick thing, connect the grounded chassis on this end, and then I am, again, hand in a pocket. I'm just going to make that a habit because that's what I've read. So I'm going to do that. And we're just going to go and touch it where it read 7 before. And it should reduce. There we go. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's like it takes a bit longer as you get closer to 0. So now we're down to 0. So there's now 0 volts anywhere in this circuit. So I can completely do this without any fear. I could have done that with 7 as well, but just to be safe, I think it makes sense to put it down to 0. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get this off out of the way. I'll just unplug it. Now we'll go ahead and just examine the components in here and kind of see if anything looks loose. The amp made sound, so that's great. I'm just going to take my little tool here and just touch things. It's kind of loose. The solder work in here looks really poor. This connection in particular, I can stick the tip right through. It doesn't completely fill up. And that's not great. So I can focus on that a bit more. That looks very bad. Solder here looks pretty bad. Solder is really bad right here. But it's solid. It's not... doesn't look like it's coming undone. Yeah, really poor soldering over here. So, yeah, I guess I should now shift to the topic of originality. I have no idea. Looking at this, a lot of these parts look new, and the wires, tons of different types, lots of mishmash and gauges. These are like cloth covered. These are obviously like plastic covered and really thin gauge, thicker gauge. I am just going to assume that basically nothing in this amp that's left is original. And that's fine. I didn't know what I was buying. You know, I didn't pay a ton of money for it. To be honest, I don't really know what it's worth. But I felt comfortable enough that opening it up, whatever I saw once I did research, if I figured out any of it's original, any of it's not a big deal. You know, like I said, this is not a vintage Princeton or anything like that, so I'm not really worried or concerned about it having special capacitors or anything in it. My goal is to just kind of make sure it's wired correctly, sounds good, is bulletproof, and put the best components in it that I can afford. And yeah, that's kind of the goal, but I have no idea. Most of these things look replaced, so I doubt any of this is original. It's very simple looking inside here. It's a very simple amp, so not super intimidating to me right now. I imagine the other Magnatone would be pretty crazy, so that's why we're starting with this one, because it's so simple. Okay, so next step, I think what I want to do is plug it back into the wall. Be very careful, turn it on, and then I'm going to do what I'm doing right now and see if we can get any crackles or any noises to see if we can identify some bad solder joints, even though I don't really notice anything when I'm touching them. Maybe there's one that's really bad. And okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so the amp is plugged in. Go ahead and turn it on. So this is where it gets a little scary. But I got a hand in a pocket, and I've got this non-conductive tool, so I should be fine. I'm going to turn the volume up pretty high so we can hear anything. Don't know if my mic will be able to pick that up, but it's already got some like crackles and stuff with nothing happening. So let's go ahead and just kind of poke and prod a little bit. In fact, I'm going to point the mic down towards the amp to see if it'll pick up more. even raise the gain a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and start over here. It's interesting, as my hand gets closer, it gets noisier. It looks like I'm clipping the mic. Let me turn the mic back down. Turn the amp back down. So crackle when I move that. Big crackle when I move that. Crackle when I move that. Probably have to speak louder so the mic will pick me up. So crackling when I touch any of these. Big crackle with this one. Following the wiring over here, this is the power tube. So nothing over here at the power tube. This is the rectifier tube over here. Nothing at the rectifier tube. So it seems like it's all right in this vicinity. So it seems like this terminal strip, if it's touched, okay, I'm going to put the mic back up towards me. Okay, hopefully I didn't blow the mic out too much there, but yeah, it seems to be all based around here. It's got a decent little hum. Okay, so I'm going to turn it off now. Actually, one more thing I want to test. I want to test for the tubes to see if they're microphonic. I can't really easily move the camera, so I'm just going to keep the camera where it's at. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to take this tool and just kind of... Oh, interesting. I don't know if you guys can hear that. For some reason, it's picking that. So that tells me it's got a microphonic tube then. It's picking up. Yeah, listen to that. So I'm just very lightly touching the end of this tool, hitting the chassis. So, but that's not the tube, that's the capacitor. Which doesn't even look like it's hooked up. Looking at it, it's... What the heck? Okay, so this is not even hooked up, this capacitor. That silver can capacitor thing that has multiple caps in it. It looks like just the ground is being used. So these must be replacing... Sorry, I need to... These must be replacing what's in there, and that was just kept there because that's probably original to the amp. But it seems like that ground is really bad right here. Or something. Well, nothing's connected to that ground, so I'm confused. But touching that causes issues. Hear the amp freaking out a little bit right now. Try and move the mic to pick that up. Now it's not going to do it. Okay, so yeah, going back to that, you can tell it's microphonic because I'm just tapping this and it's projecting a noise out of the speaker, a loud one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap this like that over to the 3 tubes in this amp, and we'll see if any noise comes out. So I'm going to point the mic back down. Let's try it. So this is the rectifier tube, nothing. Power tube, nothing. And then this is the 12AX7. Bingo. Hopefully you can hear that. Yep, so that tube is bad. I'm going to touch this capacitor down here. Whoa. Okay, so this silver can capacitor thing, if I touch that, freaks out. Sorry for your ears, guys. Okay, so that... I'm confused. I'm confused right now. So this, when I move that, causes that noise issue, but this is not connected to that can capacitor. It is connected here, but there's nothing connected to ground. So why would that happen? Okay, I think I figured it out, guys. Let me see if I can move the camera to show you. That's got to be it. All right, let me put the mic back up at me. So I'm gonna move the camera down. Hopefully, you guys can see what I mean here. Let me see if I can get it in focus. Okay. So ignore these 2 wires here. Under this is the can capacitor. And this is not connected to anything. It's just soldered to what I think is the tab holding this can capacitor in place because it's not screwed in. You can see there's a tab right here for it as well. And there's nothing connected to that. It's like twisted. So instead of like laid flat against the chassis, it's twisted to keep it in place, I think. Then if I look here, there's a bunch of solder here. And I think that if I move the can, it is disturbing this ground, which is grounding this, which makes noise when I touch it, and this little guy, which also makes noise. You can't really see it. It's kind of hiding there. It's a little resistor. Let's see if I can focus it even closer. So I think, move that out of the way a little bit, that if I move this, it's actually moving the entire can capacitor, which is in turn disturbing the ground right here. So I'm going to see if I move the capacitor, or the can, I don't know what you call them, can capacitor, whatever. If it seems like it's moving this blob of solder right here. Yeah, it definitely is. I hope you guys will be able to see that. So I'm just taking my finger and just kind of rotating it. So this is not a secure ground. So if I try and secure it, maybe if I... Okay, amp's like freaking out now. Okay, so I'm convinced this preamp tube is microphonic and this ground here is causing a lot of issues. I don't know if that's all the issues, but those are the main issues. Okay, I'm gonna turn the amp down. All right, and while I'm here, I'm gonna show you guys. Let's see how I want to do this. Let me readjust the camera. So while I'm here, I'm going to show you guys the voltage when the amp is on. Because it was reading 7 before. So I'm going to do this really carefully and safely. So I'm going to be connecting this ground lug back to chassis. And then I'm going to be connecting this red here to, again, this is all insulated. I've got a hand in a pocket. And I'm going to connect this there, and we should get really high voltage. So 216. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. Now, if I turn the amp off, I'm assuming this amp just automatically discharges the caps. It has to because I just turned it off and it got down to 7. So we're going to turn it off and see what happens. Wow. Okay, so there you go. So some amps apparently will not do that. They will actually hold the voltage. This one just drops basically to 0. So it's plugged in right now, so you won't want to touch it. But if it was unplugged, it would be safe to touch. It's just 2 volts. So, okay. I feel like I learned a lot doing this. I was really nervous, to be honest, but it wasn't too bad. So, and I think we discovered the main issues. So I think next steps in the following video, I'm going to get a new 12AX7 preamp tube. And then to solder to that is going to take a beefy soldering iron. I don't have a big enough one, I think, to solder properly to the chassis there. So I'm going to order a big soldering iron and to be able to do that properly. And I think what I'll do is I'm just going to resolder just about everything. And what I might honestly do, I might just replace all of this wiring with new cloth covered wiring like this is. And I think that'll look a lot better than all this random wiring that clearly doesn't look original. I've got some black, yellow, and white. So I think I could do it with that. Anyways, then next stage after I kind of get a new preamp tube and figure out how I'm going to ground this properly, I want to look at the schematic and try and figure out the differences between the schematic and what it's laid out as right now, and determine if I need to buy any new capacitors, resistors, what's out of spec, so we can kind of, whoops, my camera cut out there. So basically I was just talking about the capacitors and determining what's been done to the amp that's changed it from the stock wiring shown in the schematic, and then to kind of determine whether I want to, assuming there are changes, which I don't know, maybe there are, looking at the amp, obviously things have been done to it, so maybe they brought it or kept it stock, or maybe they modified it, I'm not sure. But I'd like to get the amp working in its current form, assuming, you know, I can, and then decide if I want to bring it back to stock or not, if it's not stock already. And then maybe I'll compare the changes and whether, you know, it makes sense or not. So I don't know. I'm really just kind of flying by the seat of my pants here, but I'm excited to do this series, and I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I hope you guys stay tuned for more. So until next time, you know, I got to order some parts, but once I get those things in, I'll start recording the next part, and hopefully you guys will tag along with me during this journey. All right, see you guys.